there, Stampers. This is Lisa with Queen Bee Creations. I'm talking about the new annual catalog coming out and how we are going to be having lots of new stamp sets. And so this is the one we're working with today. It's called the Birds and Branches Bundle. It's a bundle because it comes with the stamps and the dies that coordinate with it. And when you buy them as a bundle, you save 10%. And so today I have some fun cards we're going to be playing around with. So here we are down on my desk. As I said, we're going to be making these 2 cards today. This one has the die cut through the front of it with the bird stamped inside. This one also has the die cut, but I stamped on a piece of paper. I inserted on the inside so that I would still have plenty of room to write a message. And I featured this pretty little branch edge to it. So to make the first card, I started out with a garden green card base that was 8.5 by 5.5, scored at 4 1/4. And then I took it over to my Big Shot machine. You can do it with any die cutting machine, but I took and laid the piece of paper down and I set this right on the edge. And then I set this in the middle and then I ran it through the machine. Now because this is an edgelit die, it's only going to cut on the outside and in the little holes. This piece along here did not cut, which made it an edge. This one cut all the way through. And then after I did that, I thought it still needed a little something. It looked a little blank to me, and so I ran it through the machine again with our subtle embossing folder. So I don't know if you can see that, but there's kind of a linen look to the cardstock, and that's caused by the subtle embossing folder. To go on the inside, I had a piece of cardstock. This is very vanilla, and it's 3 1/4 by 5 1/4, and that's going to fit right in here. And then I have the inside piece that's going to go right there. And then I cut a little piece that I'm going to use as the greeting on the front that's 3/4 inch by 2.5 inch. And so I'm going to start stamping the inside of what's going to go on here. Now how I'm going to do this, because the little hole is not that large, what I'm going to do is I'm going to just gently position the paper where it's going to go on the inside. And I'm going to take a pencil and I'm just going to draw a few little marks of where my edges are so that I know where I'm going to be stamping. So I want my image to be within this circle. Now this is pencil, which means I can erase it, no problem. So don't panic there. I'm going to start out by putting the nest at the bottom, and I want to do that in crumb cake because that's a nice straw color. But all twigs are not equal in color, right? Twigs out there are a little bit of this, a little bit of that. And so what I did is I brought in my Stampin' Write markers. I have Soft Suede and Early Espresso. I'm going to take the brush tip end and I'm just going to tap it. Just putting little marks. Now I'm going light to dark, so I started out with my lightest color. I inked up on the pad, and then I used my Soft Suede, and now I'm going to go to Early Espresso because it won't matter if I get Soft Suede onto this, but it might matter if I got Early Espresso onto this. You follow me? I don't want to put a darker color on a lighter. But after I do that, and then I go to stamp, it's going to give me multicolored branches. Okay, so now that I have the nest, now I want to put some eggs in it. Now the eggs come in a series of 3. You can stamp all 3 of them onto, say, this is Seaside Spray. You could stamp them onto there, and then there's a die cut that will cut all 3 of them out at once. And then you will have 3 little individual eggs. I wanted to stamp them instead of die cut them, so how I'm going to do that is I'm going to take my Seaside Spray pad and my ink stamps, and I'm only going to ink the 1. And so I'm going to come over here to the edge, and I'm only putting ink on one of the 3 eggs. And so there we go. Now I have my 3 eggs. In this one I did branches. I think I'm going to leave those out this time. I think maybe that green is enough. Okay, so I just erased all of my little marks, and then I can come in with some adhesive. There's our little nest through the window. Now for the sentiment, I'm using another stamp set. This is the Many Mates. I just love this little thank you here. It is so simple and easy, clean. Seems to match everything that I do. So let's see, early espresso. And I'm using my grid paper to line this up and make sure it's straight. I'm using some fun new products out of the new catalog, and one of them is this adorable little punch that will allow me to create sentiments with kind of an edge on it. Normally, our punches come with the edge built into them, and they're a certain size. And so this is a great size. Lots of sentiments fit in it. Some don't. So what they have done is they've made this little thing that will allow you to get some super narrow to wider ends, and you can choose any length that you want and just punch the end of it. And so I can put this into my punch. I always look from the back because I want to make sure they're centered. I mean, there's these little grid lines in the front, and so my 3/4 inch goes in this second little notch. It should be perfect. I guess I'm a little bit picky, and I look over and make sure that it's perfect, and then punch it. Now I'm just going to flip it over and do the opposite end. Now I did this with 2.5 inches, but you could do this with any length you wanted. You could have something 4 inches long, punch both ends, and you have your own custom label. Just like that. So super fun, super easy. That can go right here on the front of my card. I like these little ends when they have the little bumps over them to put a little something in the corner or this edge. So what I'm going to do is use my Take Your Pick tool and grab a couple of these and stick them right on the end. Now I'm leaving them white. You can use our Stampin' Blends, and you can color them any color you would like them to be. So you can have pearls in a number of different colors just by using your Stampin' Blend. Then I'm going to come in with some Stampin' Dimensionals. Now I wrote on the back of this, and it's with a pen, but it's one of those erasable pens. If I wanted to, I could erase it off. It would be no big deal, but I'm hiding it. So unless somebody really picks apart my card, they're not going to see that. So I'm just going to leave it there and attach this right here. Now on the other one, I stamped the bird. I put him there, and I also stamped some little flowers. So you can choose if you'd wish to do that. The way that this bird works is that you would stamp the base color and then the accents over it. And they have given you 2 different birds so that you can face it either direction. I think that's super handy. Now I used this just with my clear blocks. You have to make sure, see, that's 2 different birds. They're going different directions. So there we go. There's the same bird, the solid and the detailed. And I just went ahead and lined them one over the other. We'll take crumb cake for our base layer. And then I would come in with the soft suede early espresso, one of them, and layer over the top. Now, what I want to do is make sure that they line up. So I'm kind of watching the tail and the beak, maybe the little bend right here. And I'm going to move it closer so I can look straight down from the top. And there we go. Now I'm a little bit off. I'm not too worried about it. Sometimes those things really bother me, and when they do, I pull out the Stamparatus, because that's the beauty of that tool, is that you can take the 2 pieces of the bird and you can adjust them on here. So what I would do is just take part 1 of the bird, and I'd put it on a plate, put my cardstock in here, And then I would go ahead and ink up and stamp part 1. Now for part 2, you pull the plate out, flip it around, and then you take a very clean part 2. Get one of my chamois out and make sure this is super clean. And then what I'm going to do is set it over the top. So I'm going to take this bird, make sure that it's shoved clear up into the corner, and then I'm going to set this right over the top. Now I can move this around, I can look at it from the side, I can manipulate it, play around with it, see what I'm doing, and then I close this and pick that up. Now this should make sure that when I ink this up and stamp part 2, that I've lined it really well. See, there we go, beautiful. And so that's how I use the Stamparatus to make sure that I've got a really good lined up impression with these 2-step stamping stamps. The beauty of it also is that I can do multiples of these in a row. Once I get everything all lined up, as long as I don't move those 2 stamps, they're always going to be perfectly aligned. So it's wonderful. I could stamp out a whole bunch of birds and have them ready to go and only have to position them once. Also, if I had stamped down and maybe it wasn't dark enough and I wanted to stamp again, it would go in exactly the same spot, allowing me to do a second stamping onto there. Then we have, like I said, the coordinating dies. And so I can come in with a die cutting machine and the die. I store my plates like this upside down on purpose because the pressure of the roller going down on the plates with the plates this direction helps flatten them out. So sometimes we have issues with them warping. You know, they get a little bit of a bow to it. The way you avoid that is to flip the plates each time that you use them and store them upside down. Also, I keep my more used one on the bottom and the cleaner one on top. I'm going to just set the die on there, and it goes edge to edge. These new dies line up exactly with the edge. You should not see any white around them. A perfect little bird, so Mom could either be sitting on top of the eggs or, as I did on the other one, set her down there. And here you can see the 2 different birds. One's got its tail up, one's got its tail down. This is soft suede, this is early espresso. Just slight little differences. Just put your own little spin on it. Do what you think looks good. Now for card 2, I have a piece of old olive cardstock, 8.5 by 5.5, scored at 4 1/4. We're going to do this card. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to stamp the outside. Now I do that before attaching to the card, but I'm going to attach it to the card and then die cut. So what I want to know is kind of about where the die cut's going to go. And so I laid the die cut down and again use little pencil marks to tell myself where it's going to go. Because in this example I kind of tried to estimate it and I stamped over these. And I don't think I wanted to. I think maybe I wanted these to be more white. They might stand out a little more. And so I wanted to know where my edges were. Now this stamp set comes with the branch, which you could make it a winter tree, a spring tree, a fall tree, just by, you know, putting leaves on it, not putting leaves, changing the color of the leaves, whatever you wish to do. Because we're in spring and the birds are out nesting, I'm going to go ahead and ink it up in green. So there's this coordinating stamp. And this one is the leaves, and they fit perfectly right onto the top of that. So again, you could use a Stamparatus, you could eyeball it. I find this one very easy to eyeball. There we go, old olive. Just move it in close to you, look straight down. Some people prefer to stand up when they're doing those things for the best alignment. Okay, so now I've got the branches all the way around, but I think I'd like it a little fuller. So what I'm going to do is just bring in the edge of the stamp and stamp the leaves more all the way around, making this outside very full. Now again, I tried to stay out of the middle, so let's see how successful we were with that. Again, for an added effect, I'm going to come in and sponge the edges. Now I'm leaning over quite far because I want a little more than just an accent on the edge. I want this to blend in fairly deep. So see how I'm getting a nice wide edge here? I could also choose to come this way and get a very narrow edge, but that's not what I wanted. I want it to come over a little more. You have total control on how much the edging you're going to have here. Then we want to attach it. And I'm putting a little more adhesive than normal because I want it to have adhesive around here because the middle's going to be cut out. So my adhesive went all the way across. Now I'm going to go all the way through and then I'm going to crank and come back the opposite way. Hoping that that got a nice deep cut. I'm going to turn it over and look and make sure that it has cut all the way through before the die shifts, because if it hasn't, you can put it down and run it through again. But you want to make sure that the cardstock does not come out of that die at all, because the slightest little bit of shift and you're not going to cut in exactly the same spot. So once I'm sure that it's cut all the way through, then I can just pop off my die and just pop this out gently. I have the die brush tip. You could have, while the die was still in there, run the brush over it. Or you can use the pointy end and just poke these little pieces out. So see, I think I like that better. Without the greenery on the leaves here. I mean, both look good. Your choice, but if you wanted to avoid the middle, as I did this time, the little pencil marks are a great guide, and then they just pop right off. A little bit of eraser, and you'd never know they were there. Okay, so for the inside of the card, I'm going to have another piece of the Very Vanilla, and this is 4 inches, 5 1/4, as was this one. Again, I want to make sure that I'm getting this exactly where I want it. So I'm going to position it where I'm going to glue it. Come back and do my little pencil marks. Then I can come in and stamp my images. Give it a little bit of a tap with the brush end of Soft Suede and Early Espresso over the top of the crumb cake. Come back in with my Seaside Spray. I'm only inking one of the eggs. Okay, so what I did right there is this is called a second generation stamping. This is the same color. This is Seaside Spray. And I stamped it off onto my paper and then onto here. And what that did was it gave me just a slightly lighter color. Both of these are the same ink pad. This is first generation, this is second generation. Now I can come in with the other stamp that has the more detail to it and stamp right over the top. And so now that bird has all of that depth of our double stamping, but I only used one color. Here I had used Balmy Blue and Pacific Point. That one's much brighter. So I wanted a more subtle look for this card. So that's all one ink pad. So if you have limited supplies, don't let that limit you. There's still a lot more we can do. You can even color emboss with your pads. Did you know that? If you have the Stamparatus, you can come in with your image and you can stamp it in a color onto some cardstock. So you would come in, you would stamp with the color, Then you would clean this off and you would use Versamark ink, ink this up and put it in place. Now Versamark is just a watermark kind of ink and it's a little bit sticky, and so what it allows you to do is stamp it onto there, and then, which is right over the top of what you just stamped in color, add a little bit of clear embossing powder and heat it, and you've just embossed in whatever color ink pad you have. So another tip for your Stamparatus. Now if I wanted to, I could come in and, give it a little sponging of sky. I can put the sentiment in there. Whatever you choose to do with the card. You can stamp it on the inside and just have the bird open up. Or you could adhere it over here. This would even allow you to move it around so you could see the bird better maybe. Position it where you want it and then just trim off and glue it to the inside. Up to you. Again, many options when you're stamping. The idea is to be stress-free. What you're doing out there is you're creating. And we're being stress-free while we do that. This is how we keep ourselves sane while we're all locked inside, as we buy Stampin' Up supplies and we craft. I can't tell you how many people I've heard are getting started on their Christmas cards already. Might as well use the time wisely while we have it, right? Although I'm finding myself busier than ever as I try to move my business all online. So I have many classes that are available if you're looking to make more cards, if you enjoy watching the videos of me and you'd like me to send you some pre-cut materials or show you how to use a new stamp set. Those are always options on my store. You can go to queenbeecreations.net and look under online classes. And there are quite a few out there right now. And then as soon as I get more stamp sets in from the new catalog, there will be even more for you to choose from, along with our many numerous kits where again everything would be all inclusive and ready to go. Thank you for joining me, and I will see you right back here next Monday at 2:30 for another Facebook Live. Bye.